You are now listening to The Forefront Radio, where we discuss history, the Bible, the history of the Israelites, science, and other matters. Bring it out. The history of the blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans as it relates to the Bible. Who were you prior to slavery? Who were you prior to colonization? These answers and more can be seen and heard as you listen to The Forefront Radio.
All right, welcome to the Forefront Radio. Welcome to the Forefront Radio. I'm your host, Aphiel, Levi. Hope everybody's doing all right. We're going to get into a discussion today in regards to the person known as Bilal ibn Rabah, the hidden Hebrew of the Habasha. And it's a very interesting topic that we're going to touch on today in our discussion. So now many people in the Hebrew community are not familiar with this individual, and it's very important for us to cover this so that way our people can be well informed about the truth concerning this man, right? He is remembered as the first muezzin of Islam, the man who voiced echoed across Medina, calling the faithful to prayer, a symbol of so-called equality in early Islam. But behind the echoes of his adhan lies a forgotten identity, shrouded by centuries of religious transformation and colonial erasure. Today we uncover the Hebrew roots of Bilal ibn Rabah, a man of Ethiopian descent, a man of royal lineage, a man whose ancestors may have walked not just the sands of Arabia, but across the paths of Jerusalem. Now, to understand Bilal, we must first understand the Habasha, the ancient Ethiopians historically tied to the kingdom of Aksum. They were more than just African, they were descendants of Sheba, of David, of Solomon. The Kebra Nagask, while I don't recommend it as a holy writing to use as your template, but I do recommend it as historical information, Ethiopia's royal chronicle preserves this, that the Queen of Sheba bore a son named Menelik I by King Solomon. Menelik returned to Ethiopia with the Queen of Sheba and returned to Ethiopia with the Ark of the Covenant, allegedly, founding a dynasty of Israelite kings. This Solomonic rule for centuries, and through it, many black people were practicing Israelites, observing the Shabbat, the Sabbath, the Torah, the dietary laws, long before the rise of Islam and long before the spread of Eurocentric Western churchianity. Now, Bilal is not just a Muslim icon. Bilal ibn Rabah was born in Mecca to a slave mother named Hama'a, who was a queen and said to be of Abyssinia or Habasha origin. So we're going to get deep into this Habasha notion in a moment. But what does Abyssinian mean in its context? It means he came from a lineage where Hebrew customs were not foreign. The Habasha had their own Hebrew scriptures, their own ark, and their own connection to Zion. Islam did not find a blank slate in Africa. It found an already practicing Hebrew people and original Hebrews that were forcefully converted into Islam, just like we were forcefully converted into the religion of the Greeks and Romans known as Christianity. And in Bilal's case, it found a voice that carried both old and new. Judaism didn't originate in Europe. The Torah didn't come from Rome. And Israelites were not pale-skinned men with yarmulkes. They were men like Moses who passed for an Egyptian. You read about that in Exodus chapter 2 and Exodus chapter 4. A black man among black people. They were like Zephaniah the prophet, whose father was called Kushi, which literally means Ethiopian or black. Before Islam, the Hebrew faith was rooted deeply in African soil, including Egypt, including Libya, including Kush, including Ethiopia. The Falasha or Beta Israel of Ethiopia still carry this legacy to today. And Bilal's people, they were part of this same tapestry. So why is this information hidden? Why has Bilal's Hebrew heritage been erased from mainstream narratives? Because it acknowledges Bilal as a Hebrew is to admit that Black Africa preserved the covenant when others turned from it. It acknowledges that the Solomonic dynasty, the throne guarded in Ethiopia, was as legitimate as the thrones of Jerusalem. Bilal may have been enslaved in Arabia, but spiritually he came from kings. He came from Zion. And in lifting up his voice to call for prayer for his people, he was not just announcing Islam, he was echoing the ancient voices of Israel. Today, we see Black people around the world reclaiming their identity. Bilal stands as a powerful symbol, not just for Islam, not just for freedom, but for a deeper truth that the original Hebrews were Black, that the Torah lived in Africa, and that the children of Solomon walked among us still to this day. To our Afro-Hebraic brothers and sisters, it's time to wake up. The truth of your lineage runs deep, deeper than Mecca, deeper than Rome. It runs back to Jerusalem, through Sheba, through Ethiopia, and through men like Bilal. So now what we're going to do, folks, we're going to show you some brief history and show you this cartoon where they literally show you information pertaining to Bilal. And it's shocking to find out that this information is readily available and seen if we would just pay attention. Watch this. Let's go to real quick Rise of a Warrior, this film, and I want you to notice something very interesting about this thing. I want you to notice something very interesting as we go into the history of this thing, because it's going to be very remarkable. Very, very remarkable. Let me make the screen a little bit bigger so y'all can see it. All right, we're just going to play the first couple of minutes of this. I want you to see for yourself what is going on here, and it's going to play a role into the story of Bilal. Okay, so this is a movie about Bilal. We're going to touch on this person, and it's going to be very interesting what you see. Watch this. So what you first notice is this young man is practicing his swordmanship with the toy sword, right? And at the same time, you see military troops riding through Africa, unaliving a whole bunch of people, right? Watch this. Is the beginning stages of Muslim and Christian conquest of Africa. This is what you're seeing here. Watch this. Notice the people in shackles and chains, chained up, right? Just like you read in the Bible, Deuteronomy chapter 28, right? Deuteronomy 28 prophesies that the sons and daughters of Jacob would be taken into captivity. You read about the same thing in Luke chapter 21, verse 24. Let's read that real quick. Luke chapter 21, verse 24. This is the book of Luke, chapter 21. Let's start at verse 20. Luke chapter 21, let's start at verse 20. It says, and when you shall see Jerusalem compassed with armies, then know that the desolation thereof is nigh. This is after 70 AD. You have the Romans that came and colonized, and you also have the Arabs. Right now, we're focusing just on the Arabs for today. Then it says, let them which are in Judea flee to the mountains, meaning where? If you're leaving out of Jerusalem, where are you going to go? You're going to go south into Africa, into Arabia, into different areas, right? That's what our people did. They fled into Arabia. They fled into further south, into Africa, into Egypt, into Ethiopia. Watch this. It says, then let them that are in Judea flee to the mountains, and let them which are in the midst thereof depart not out of the countries that nor enter into the countries thereinto. For these be the days of vengeance, that all things which are written may be fulfilled. But woe unto them that be with child, and them that give suck in those days, for there shall be great distress in the land, and wrath upon this people. And there shall be, and they, watch this, and they shall fall by the edge of the sword, and shall be led away captives into all nations. And Jerusalem shall be trodden down of the Gentiles until the time of the Gentiles be fulfilled. It's the beginning stages of the Roman and Muslim conquest. Arabic conquest, the Ishmaelites and the Edomites conquering the sons and daughters of Jacob, just like you read in Psalms chapter 83. And we're watching it right here on the screen. So They will hide things in animations right in front of your face. And unless you know history of what happened to our ancestors, you will be lost in the source. Let's go to Psalms 83. Let's go to Psalms 83 real quick. Let's go to Psalms 83. Let's start at verse 2. It says, "For lo, thy enemies have made a tumult. They that hate thee have lifted up the head. They have taken crafty counsel against thy people, and have taken counsel and consulted against thy hidden ones. They have said, Come, and let us cut them off from being a people, that the name of Israel may be no more in remembrance." That's why a lot of Habasha don't know who they are. They think that they're Habasha. That's the title that was given to them by the Arabs. A lot of them don't know that they're parts of the 12 tribes of Israel. Just like you got black folks in America, you got black folks in Africa, in Asia, in Europe, in Oceania that don't know that they're the lost tribes of Israel. Watch this. It says, "They have said, Come, let us cut them off from being a nation, that the name of Israel may be no more in remembrance." Now we call ourselves black. Now we call ourselves Falasha. Now we call ourselves colored. Now we call ourselves Indian. Now we call ourselves Aboriginal. Now we call ourselves colors in a crayon box, like Negro, like Moreno, right? Now we call ourselves Hispanic. Now we call ourselves Latino. Now we call ourselves African. Now we call ourselves African American. Our names of Israel has been originally cut off from our people. Watch this. What was the nations that consulted? Watch this, verse 5. "For they have consulted together with one consent. They are confederate against thee. The tabernacles of Edom," that's the Romans, "and the Ishmaelites," that's the Arabs of Islam. So the two major religions that enslaved us starting initially was the Romans with Roman Catholicism and Roman Protestantism. And then you also have the Ishmaelites with Islam. Watch this. "Of Moab," that's the children of the Chinese or Asians or Asiatics, "and the Hagarenes," that's the children of Hagar. Those are Ishmaelites intermingled with Egyptians. Watch this. It says, "Gabal and Ammon and Amalek," that's the son of Esau, "and the Philistines," that's the indigenous Canaanites mixed with Egyptians, "and the inhabitants of Tyre." Tyre used to be the Canaanites living in Lebanon. Then it says, "Ashur," that's the Assyrians, "also is joined unto them. They have holpen the children of Lot," that's Ammon and Moab, "Selah." So that's going into Iran, Iraq, Turkey, Istanbul. All these places placed the sons and daughters of Jacob into slavery. The Ottoman Turks had us in slavery, right? The Ishmaelite Arabs had us in slavery. The Persians had us in slavery. And the Edomite Romans had us in slavery, y'all. And you're seeing it on the screen. Watch this. Y'all see that? So this goes into the history of our people being held in captivity in these areas of Islam. Very important for us to note these things, y'all. This shows us the history that we have not been taught in school. When did they ever teach you in school that Black history is Bible history? So now let's touch on briefly the history of this person by the name of Bilal ibn Rabah to show you his Hebrew origins. Let's go to that real quick. Let's go to Wikipedia. This is why all of information, ignorance is a choice. It's important to always look up information, y'all. Watch this. Bilal ibn Rabah. Bilal ibn Rabah, circa March the 5th, 580 to 640, March 640, also known as Bilal Habasha, or simply Bilal, was a close companion, allegedly, of the Islamic prophet Muhammad. Born in Mecca, he was of Abyssinian, aka modern-day Ethiopia descent, and was formerly enslaved. Wait a minute. How is he a companion and he was enslaved? How was he a companion if he was enslaved? You see how they try to twist stuff? You understand? Watch this. He is considered the first muezzin, who is the call to prayer in Islam, personally chosen by Muhammad for his deep and melodious voice. That's what they say. That's what they say. That's what they say. Let me show it on the screen so y'all can read it with me. Let me show it on the screen so y'all can read it with me. Let's read it again. Let's read it again. Bilal ibn Rabah, right? Also known as Bilal Habasha, right? Look at that term, Habasha. Or simply Bilal, was the close companion, allegedly, of the Islamic prophet Muhammad. Now let's touch on a prophet for a moment, right? There are no prophets. You may have diviners, you may have fortune tellers, but there are no prophets that do not originate from the sons and daughters of Israel. Anyone that is outside of Israel, connected to the Creator, is not a prophet. They're a diviner, they're a soothsayer, right? Because the Bible tells you who the prophets are. The Bible clearly tells you who the prophets are. Let's go to it real quick. We're gonna pause this for a second. Let's go to the Bible. Because most of y'all have to read the Bible in order to understand the vast amount of deception that has been taught to us throughout the earth. Let me share my Bible app real quick so y'all can see it for yourself. Let's go to the book of Amos. We're going to go to the book of Amos, chapter 2, verse 11. We're going to go to the book of Amos, chapter 2. We're going to read verse 11. Let's go to Amos, chapter 2, verse 11. Let me share it on the screen so y'all can see it. All right, here we go. Here we go. Let me make it big. Amos chapter 2, verse 11. Does everybody see it on the screen? It says, and I raised up your sons, and I raised up your sons, meaning your children, your lineage, your bloodline, your people, for prophets. So who is God talking to? Watch this. And of your young men for Nazarites. Nazarites grow their hair really long in locks, aka braided hair, aka locked hair, right? Is it not even thus, O ye children of Israel, saith the Lord? Who said it? God said it. Who said it? God said it. So there ain't no Baptist prophet. There ain't no Seventh-day Adventist prophet. Sorry, Ellen G. White fans. There is no Islamic prophet. Muhammad is not a prophet. He copied and pasted the Torah. He copied and pasted the Tanakh. It was Israelites that encountered this man, and he created a new religion based on his interaction with the original Black Hebrews. Y'all understand that? I hope y'all get it. That's why I always say either you get it or you don't. Right? Watch this. Let's go back to the Wikipedia article. Let's go back to the Wikipedia article real quick. Let me share my screen again. Bilal ibn Rabah. Bilal ibn Rabah. Let's go to that real quick. Here we go. And it says Bilal ibn Rabah, also known as Bilal al-Habasha, or simply Bilal, was a close companion of the Islamic prophet born in Mecca. He was of Abyssinian, aka modern Ethiopia, meaning black descent, and was formerly enslaved. He is considered the first muezzin, called to prayer in Islam, personally chosen by Muhammad for his deep and melodious voice. So now when you look at the link right here, it says slavery in Islam according to BBC. We're going to go to that article next. Watch this. He was formerly enslaved and was known for his deep melodious resonant voice, which he called to Muslims to the obligatory prayers. According to Islamic tradition, Bilal was one of the earliest converts, meaning that wasn't his original religion, to Islam, and he is often regarded to be the first African or Black Muslim. So that shows you, y'all, our people wasn't into these religions. They were enslaved. Y'all just saw the video of it, right? Watch this. It says, Bilal ibn Rabah was born in Mecca in the Hijaz in the year 5080. Now watch this. I just noticed something about this term Hijaz, right? Watch this. It also says that he was of the clan of Banu Yuma or Juma. Okay, so I noticed something about this term Hijaz right here, and it's interesting because it touches on something that I read in our last class about the deception of Isaiah 53. I'm going to go to it real quick. Let me see if I can find it. African boys in Islam made eunuchs. I think I looked it up last time. Made eunuchs. Let me type it here. Hopefully it'll pop up. Let me see. Yes. Okay. Let me read this real quick. It says, in some historical contexts, particularly within the context of the Ottoman Empire and other Islamic societies, some African boys were castrated and made eunuchs to serve in harems and palaces. These eunuchs, often from East Africa, aka the Middle East, aka Northeast Africa, aka Habasha, were part of the harem and palace culture and served as guardians of the women and officials within. The practice of castration and the use of eunuchs was not directly tied to Islam, but was a cultural practice adopted, meaning it was incorporated into Islam and utilized in various parts of the world, including in Muslim empires. So meaning what? It started first with the Ishmaelites and the Arabs, and then they did it in their Islamic circles. You understand? So let's touch on history of slavery in Islam real quick. Let's share this real quick. So let's touch on Muhammad and slavery. Muhammad and slavery. 1 second, let me pull it up. All right. Muhammad and slavery. All right. Notice what it says here. Under Muhammad and slavery. Very important for us to understand this, y'all. Let me make the screen a little bit bigger for y'all. Let me make it a little bit bigger. Okay. Muhammad and slavery. It says, Muhammad and slavery. The Prophet Muhammad did not abolish slavery. Let me make sure I say this straight. The Prophet Muhammad did not abolish slavery and bought and sold, captured, and owned slaves himself. Now, who were the people that he owned as slaves? Let's go to the Bible. Let's go back to the Bible. Let's go to Jeremiah. Watch this. We're going to show you your Islam right here in the Bible and how God prophesied that his sons and daughters will go into captivity. We will read it over and over until it makes sense. Let me share my Bible app again. Watch this. Let's go to, it's very fascinating how we can go into the Bible and prove history with the Bible. History with the Bible. Very important for us to understand this thing, y'all. Who did Muhammad have in captivity? Because he didn't abolish slavery. He, in fact, bought, sold, and captured and owned slaves himself, right? So who did this individual have as enslaved persons? That's the question we want to find out here. What group of people did this man have in captivity? Let's go to the Bible app and we will find out the prophecy concerning the Israelites being held in captivity by the Ishmaelite Arabs. All right, let's go to the Bible app real quick. All right, can everybody see that? All right, let's make it full screen. All right, and it reads, is Israel a servant? Is Israel a servant? Is he a homeborn slave? Why is he spoiled? Hold on, wait a minute. Hold on, wait a second. When did Polish people that converted to a religion called Judaism, when did they ever go into slavery in all nations? Can you find Polish people as slaves in the Caribbean islands? No. Can you find Polish people as slaves in North America? No. What about Germanic people that are called Ashkenazi? Did they go into slavery in all nations? No. So who is this talking about? This is talking about melanated people. Watch this. Here's the proof. Let's go to Jeremiah chapter 14, verse 2. Judah, that's where we get the term Jew from, right? Judah, Benjamin, and Levi, they're part of those that are called Jews. It says, Judah mourneth, and the gates thereof languish. They are black. What does the Bible say? They are black unto the ground, and the cry of Jerusalem is gone up. You know why this is important, y'all? You always got to prove to people in Christianity and in Islam that the original Jews are black. You know why? Because they live in under lies while they steal your tithes. Watch this. Now, let's go back. Jeremiah chapter 2, verse 14. Jeremiah chapter 2, verse 14. Is Israel a servant? Is he a homeborn slave? Why is he spoiled? Meaning, why is he destroyed? Why does he not know his nationality? Why does he not know where he comes from? Why does he not know that he has been deceived? You understand? Watch this. Let's go to chapter 3 now. Let's go to chapter 3. Watch this. Verse 2. It says, Lift up thine eyes unto the high places, and see where thou hast not been lying with. In the ways have thou sat for them as the Arabian, in the wilderness, and thou hast polluted the land with thy whoredoms and with thy wickedness. So our people went off into wickedness so much that God said, okay, you want to go into sin, you want to go into idolatry? I'm going to allow these same Ishmaelites that you love so much, I'm going to allow them to place you into captivity. Hence Muhammad. Was not Muhammad an Arabian? He sure was. Was not Islam controlled in Saudi Arabia? It sure was. So what group of people were spoiled, mentally destroyed, and held as slaves, under Islam? I know some people, they'll read the text and they still can't put two and two together. So we're going to go to some pictures. Let's pull up some pictures. Let's go to images on Google and let's type slavery in Islam. Let's go to that real quick. Yeah, let's do that. Very important, y'all. That's why when we share Black history, y'all, we always got to verify information and show it to you so that way you can see it for yourself. Right? Let's go to images here. Slaves in Islam. Let's go to images here. All right. So notice when it comes to slaves in Islam, what was the primary demographic? Look at this right here. Somebody come look at this right here. What was the primary demographic of people that were held captive by the Ishmaelite Arabs? Y'all see melanated people here? Do you see melanated people here? They got a book called Slavery in Islam, right? Do you see melanated people here? We just read in the Bible where it says we sat for them as the Arabian in the wilderness, right? We just read it in the Bible. So you see that? Slavery in Islam, the primary demographic. Now, were there other nations that were enslaved? Yes. But for centuries, most people in Islam were forced into it. Most Black people in Islam, that wasn't your original religion. Your original religion was Judaism. You were a Jew. You are a Jew. So we're looking at slavery in Islam and look at all the images. History of slavery in the Muslim world, right? Malawi, how freed slaves and non-Arabs may be fought against Islam. Slavery, the state in Islam. There's books on this thing, y'all. There's books on this thing. Right? You see, trans-Saharan slave trade, right? So this person, Bilal, was enslaved by the same crusty people, right, that authorized slavery. You see that? Muslim mindset, slavery in Islam, Christian slaves, Muslim masters. You see that? The forgotten slave trade. So many people don't know nothing about the slave trade in Islam. History of concubinage in Islam. You understand? Very important information that we cover, y'all. The reason why we're covering this is because most people don't know this history. Most people just think slavery was involved with the European parties and that's it. No, the Bible says all nations had a part. We just read it in Psalms 83. So now let's go back with that history information. Let's go back. So now we're at Muhammadan slavery. Watch this. Muhammadan slavery, the prophet Muhammad. Now we could scratch out the word prophet because we just read in Amos chapter 2, verse 11, that the only prophets are what? The Israelites. Watch this. Muhammad did not try to abolish slavery and bought, sold, captured, and owned slaves himself. Wait a minute. Wait a second. The Bible says, he that stealeth a man and sells him, and if he be found in his hand, he shall surely be put to death. That's Exodus chapter 21, verse 16. I'm pretty sure he was familiar with that passage. But because these Ishmaelites were enslaving people all the way since the time of our forefather Joseph. Remember, there was beef between our brothers early on, right? And you had Israelites that sold their brother Joseph to the Midianites and the Ishmaelites. And guess what? Those same Ishmaelites sold Joseph as a slave to Africans, to Nilotic, Sudanese type Egyptian pharaohs. You understand? And then he became second in power to Pharaoh after several years of imprisonment and captivity. Okay, so watch this. It says, He did not abolish slavery and bought and sold, captured and owned slaves himself, but he insisted that slave owners treat their slaves with well and stress the virtue of freeing slaves. I think that's a lie. There are two different ways of interpreting this. Some modern writers believe that Muhammad intended his teachings to lead to the gradual ending of slavery by limiting opportunities to access new slaves and allowing existing slaves to become free. This idea does not appear in early writings, meaning nowhere does Muhammad even say that. Nowhere does he even say that. So this interpretation is incorrect. Other writers argue that by regulating slavery, the man gave his authority to its continued existence, and that by having slaves himself, he showed his approval. You see that? So if you're not banning it outright, that means you support it. You understand? For example, it says he personally ensured the freedom of Bilal, an African slave who had converted to Islam. Bilal was chosen as a muezzin of Islam and became because of his beautiful voice. A muezzin is a person who calls the community to the daily prayers and is a great prominence and responsibility. Now check this out. Zaid was a young boy who had grown up in the household of the man as a slave and remained with the household almost also as an adopted son even after he was freed. He was amongst the first 4 people to adopt Islam. Indeed, when Zaid's father, a wealthy nobleman, tracked his son down and offered to buy his freedom from Muhammad, Muhammad told Zaid that he was free to go with his father with no money changing hands. And to his father's astonishment, Zaid chose to stay with Muhammad. I think that's some BS, but they be making up stuff out here. The prophet also married a Coptic Christian slave girl, so an Egyptian woman. In his lifetime, the man introduced the following rules about slavery, right? So blah, blah, blah on that. Don't need to know nothing about that because slavery still existed even after this man died. So don't want to hear nothing about how he's tried to set slaves free when we know that in 2017, you got black folks still sold as slaves in Islamic countries. So I don't want to hear nothing about no damn Muhammad trying to set slaves free. Obviously, his people is not following his teachings if that's the case, right? Obviously, his people are not following the teachings if that's the case. Indian Ocean slave trade. Watch this. The Indian Ocean slave trade, sometimes known as the East African slave trade, involved the capture, transportation of predominant sub-Saharan African slaves. So now nobody says sub-Saharan no more. That's the stupidest term ever. You ever heard of sub-Rocky Mountain Americans? What the hell is that? It's stupid. Sub-Appalachian Georgians. That's a misnomer to deceive you from knowing who the Israelites are. Watch this. Along the coast, such as the Swahili coast and the Horn of Africa, that's where Ethiopia is, and throughout the Indian Ocean. The Indian Ocean used to be called the Ethiopic Ocean for those that don't know. Affected areas including East Africa, Southern Arabia, the west coast of India, Indian Ocean islands including Madagascar, which is actually part of Africa, and Southeast Asia including Java. Watch this. The source of slaves primarily in Africa, but also included North Africa and the Middle East, Y'all, why do they never talk about slavery in the Middle East? Why do they never tell you outright, yeah, there was a slave trade in the Middle East, and the people why is this doing that? And the people that we enslaved were black. Whenever you hear Middle East, they want you to think Arabs and European people, right? But that's connected to Africa. You understand? Then it says the Indian Ocean islands, as well as the South Asian area. While the slave trade in the Indian Ocean started 4,000 years ago, watch this, it expanded significantly in the late antiquity, which is the 1st century CE. So right after Christ in the 1st century, when he prophesied in Luke chapter 21, verse 24, that the Israelites will fall by the edge of the sword and shall be led away captives into all nations. This is the proof of that fact, because it's saying it expanded significantly in the 1st century AD. So 100 years right after Christ had made that prediction, the slave trade expanded. And who was being sold as slaves? It wasn't white people. You understand? Watch this. With the rise of the Byzantine and Sassanid trading enterprises, Muslim slave trading started in the 7th century, with the volume of trade fluctuating with the rise and fall of local powers. Beginning in the 16th century, slaves were traded to the Americas, including the Caribbean islands. Northern, Western, and Southern European powers became involved in the slave trade. You see that? So now watch this. Look at this. Ancient Indian Ocean slave trade, aka Middle East slave trade, aka East African slave trade, right? That's what they call it. Indian Ocean slave trade is another word for East African slave trade, Middle East slave trade. Watch this. Slave trading in the Indian Ocean goes back to 2500 BCE. The ancient Babylonians, hold up, wait a minute. The ancient Babylonians, hold up, wait a second. Let's go to the Bible real quick. Notice the Babylonians were the ones that enslaved the Israelites, right? Watch this. Let's go to Isaiah 34. Let's go to Isaiah 39. Let's go to Isaiah 39. Let me show it to you in the Bible first. Isaiah 39, let's read verse 5 to 8. It says, Isaiah 35, verse 5 to 8, it says, Then said Isaiah to Hezekiah was king of Judah, Hear the word of the Lord of hosts. Behold, the days come that all that is in your house, and that which your fathers have laid up in store unto this day, shall be carried into Babylon. What does the Bible say? Shall be carried into Babylon. Nothing shall be left, saith the Lord. Of thy sons that shall issue from thee, which thou shalt beget, shall they take away, and they shall be eunuchs in the palace of the king of Babylon. You see that? So we're reading here on a Wikipedia article about the ancient Babylonians. Who did they have enslaved? The Israelites. Now, the next thing says the Egyptians. Watch this. Indian Ocean slave trade goes back to 2500 BCE. Ancient Babylonians, Egyptians. Watch this. Who did the Egyptians have the children of Israel in slavery? Let's go to Isaiah chapter 11. This is how you got to match up the Bible with world history. Let's go to Isaiah chapter 11. If y'all enjoying the live, please donate to our Cash App, APHIELLEVI, or PayPal. Watch this. Isaiah chapter 11, verse 11, it says, And it shall come to pass in that day, the Lord shall set his hand again the second time to recover the remnant of his people, which shall be left in Assyria. That's the area that was learned from the Assyrians and the Neo-Babylonians. So Assyria was part of the Babylonian Empire. And from Egypt, and from Pathros. Pathros was part of Egypt, right? And from Kush, that's Ethiopia, like we're touching on this topic today. And from Elam, that's India. And from Shinar, that's Babylon. And from Hamath, that's Syria. And from the islands of the sea. Now, who are these people that were held in captivity that are called the remnant of his people that God is going to get back out of slavery, just like he did the first time in ancient Egypt? Let my people go in Egypt. Y'all remember that story? Exodus. Let my people go in Egypt. Watch this. It says, and he shall set up an ensign for the nations, and shall assemble the outcast of Israel, and gather together the dispersed of Judah from the four corners of the earth. Wow. So let's go back. Let's read this again. Slave trading in the Indian Ocean goes back to 2500 BCE. Ancient Babylonians, Egyptians, Greeks, Indians, and Persians all traded slaves on a small scale across the Indian Ocean, aka Ethiopic Ocean, and sometimes the Red Sea. Wait a minute. The Red Sea, let my people go. Red Sea. Wait a minute. Did the Egypt? We just read about the Babylonians. We just read about the Egyptians. What about the Greeks? Let's go to the book of Joel. Y'all, give me one moment. I'll be back in 1 second. We're going to pause the live for 1 second. We're going to be right back in just a moment.
You are now listening to The Forefront Radio, where we discuss history, the Bible, the history of the Israelites, science, and other matters. Bring it out. The history of the blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans as it relates to the Bible. Who were you prior to slavery? Who were you prior to colonization? These answers and more can be seen and heard as you listen to The Forefront Radio. listening to the Forefront Radio, where we discuss history, the Bible, the history of the Israelites, science, and other matters.
All right, thank you for your patience. I apologize for the interruption, y'all. Let's go ahead and continue our discussion on the Forefront Radio. Let me go back and share the screen. All right, let's go ahead and continue where we left off. We're right here at Indian Ocean slave trade. All right, so we see here that the Indian Ocean slave trade goes back to 2,500 years. Ancient Babylonians, Egyptians, Greeks, Indians, Persians all traded slaves on a small scale across the Indian Ocean. So right now we're touching on the Greeks. So let's go to Joel chapter 3. Let's go to Joel chapter 3. Joel chapter 3, verse 6, it said, "The children also of Judah and the children of Jerusalem have you sold unto the Grecians, that you might remove them far from their borders." So this shows the Greeks being the ones to sell the children of Judah and Jerusalem, just like we read in Isaiah chapter 11, just like we read in Jeremiah. So this is showing you consistently that the sons and daughters of Jacob were being sold into captivity in these various areas. Okay, by the Babylonians, the Persians, and the Greeks. Okay, so now let's touch on something different now. Now that we touched on that, wait, let's go back right here. The Red Sea. It says right here, slave trading in the Red Sea around the time of Alexander the Greek is described by Argatharchides or Sides. Strabo's Geographica, completed at 23 CE or AD, mentions Greeks from Egypt trading slaves at the port of Andulus and other ports in the Horn of Africa. Who were they selling as slaves? Israelites. So now let's go to more information pertaining to this person by the name of Bilal. Let's show you the parallels here. This is an article from medium.com. It says Bilal ibn Rabah is considered one of the most distinguished names in Islamic history. So if folks are involved in Islam, they know of this person. Hold on a second. Let me share it again. Here we go. Those that are involved in Islam, they know of this person by the name of Bilal. They know him verbatim. Right? They know him verbatim. Very important information, y'all. It says his story is one of the most cited and most notable stories of Islam's respect for humanity, equality, anti-racism, and social equity. Bilal was a black slave from Habasha, modern-day Ethiopia, a son of an Arab father and an Ethiopian mother, allegedly. His mother was an Ethiopian princess, a black princess who was forced into slavery and got married to another slave. Bilal was born in Mecca. You see that? Let's read on. It says, due to the prevalent injustices, including racial injustice, the period before the coming of Islam is called the Jahiliyyah, a period of ignorance in Arabia. Racism was one of the first priorities that Prophet Muhammad stood against, allegedly. So if that's the case, why the hell people in Muslim society still enslaving black folks? They be lying out here, man. So now, I got a book called We the Black Jews. And in this book, we're going to read something interesting about the Habasha. Something very interesting about the Habasha. Let's read it right here. For the kids in the back. Very important information, y'all, that we're covering on the Forefront Radio. It says, let's start right here where it says, it is called Karina. Right? These people with the Jews who came back to Africa created a new culture and a new way of life. That way of life was called by the Westerners Falasha, or Ethiopian Jewish life. In the 11th century BCE, this land was called Abyssinia by the the Europeans, aka the Romans, a corruption of the Arabic term Habasha, which means a people of mixture. So remember, we just read that this man named Bilal was called Habasha, right? Right? Watch this. The Ethiopians renamed the land Ethiopia, which just means blackface, when Haile Selassie first became emperor. To that area came a tribe from Yemen in 200 BCE, a tribe called Agessan. This ancient Sabaean tribe, because Sabia or Sheba was the ancient kingdom of South Arabia before Arab conquest, and before the Mohammedan religion had taken over. So what was the original religion of these folks? Judaism. Watch this. It says, before his religion taken over, had migrated to the highlands of Ethiopia. They brought with them the writings. This is talking about the Ethiopian Hebrews, right? The writings, trades, arts, crafts, and that were then current in Arabia. About the 3rd century BCE, they formed a kingdom, the capital of which was known as Aksum. Why was Aksum important? The Ethiopians believe that the local kings of Ethiopia were descended from Solomon. Wait a minute. King of Israel. Hold on a second. And the tabernacle of the law of God, that is the Ark of the Covenant, had been brought from Jerusalem to Aksum by Menelik, Solomon's firstborn son. They believe that God had transferred his place of abode on earth from the ancient city of Jerusalem to Aksum, the ecclesiastical and political capital of Ethiopia. Rabbi Halal Paris, himself an Ethiopian and Jew, so-called Falasha, had already covered the issue in the African origins of Judaism. Wait a minute. Wait a second. In the beginning of his task, which was to write about the African, aka black people, in the Judeo-Christian Islamic experience. So y'all, the original Jews were black, y'all. You understand? The original Jews were black. You understand? Watch this. It says, all of which he stated in his direct comments on the black Jews. Wow. Under the chapter title, he gave the name Africa and the Bible. Africa and the Bible. Africa and the Bible. But in all of his detailing with the pro and con of the history of the Agha, as written by the African American historians, and definitely more so by European and European American Christian and Jewish missionaries, it is still suggested that each reader becomes much more acquainted with the facts that they were taught by Agha historians and theologians orally and in written form. Wow. So Bilal, y'all, Bilal is a melanated brother who was called Habasha, who was part of the lineage of those that were called Jews. Wow. So y'all, thank y'all for listening to the Forefront Radio. I hope this information was rewarding to you all. I was trying to break it down and make it something as easy to understand for all of us. I appreciate everyone that watches our platform, the Forefront Radio. Donate to our efforts to teach the truth here in Africa by clicking on the link and donate to our Cash App, which is APHIELLEVI. I appreciate you all. I really do. May the Most High bless you and keep you and cause his face to shine upon you. With that, we say shalom. Peace to the 12 tribes of Israel.